Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Eva Elmore. I'm the Programs Assistant here at CUE. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over some quick procedural things. The first thing is that we are talking to you live, but we are also recording this info session, and we will post a link to that recording on our website. So if you aren't able to stay for the whole info session, or if you'd like to refer back, that will be available to do that. The second thing is in the description below, I've included some directions for how to contribute your questions or requests for clarification on anything we talk about tonight. So please refer to those instructions. You can definitely also email me questions that you have. My email is also included in the description below. I'll do my best to answer any questions that I receive. But I would ask that if your question is about your personal eligibility, or if it's otherwise very specific to your proposal, that instead you email it to me so we can discuss it one-on-one. Great, so let's get started. On our agenda tonight, first we're going to talk about some info, tips, and guidelines about the open call. Then we'll walk through some examples of successful past proposals. Finally, we will draft sample budgets, both for the Solo Exhibitions open call and for the curatorial projects open call. And then I will answer any questions that we haven't addressed so far. Great, so some quick facts. Our exhibitions last 5 to 6 weeks and take place at CUE. They'll take place between January and December 2019. The exact dates of your exhibition would be set with you and the curator working with CUE at a later date, so it's not something you need to worry about too much right now. All application materials do need to be submitted online through Submittable before midnight Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, March 31st, 2018. Unfortunately, we're not able to accept applications by email or mail, so please visit our website for the link to apply through Submittable. Applicants will be notified of results by July 2018, and you will be notified through email using the email account that you set up with, or that you enter on your Submittable application. So make sure that that is an email that you have consistent access to. For winning proposals, CUE contributes a total of $11,100 towards the cost of producing a solo exhibition and $13,100 towards the cost of producing a curatorial project. We'll break down exactly what's included in those contributions a little bit later when we talk about budgets, but it does include honoraria, a shipping and installation budget, and the design and printing costs for a full color exhibition catalog, which we give away for free to visitors to the gallery, and which is also available digitally on our website. Next, let's talk about eligibility. So who can apply? For curatorial projects, it's pretty simple. Emerging curators or collaborative teams currently living in the United States. For solo exhibitions, it's a little bit more complicated. It's artists or collaborative teams currently living in the United States who meet all of this criteria. So you must not have had a solo show in a commercial New York City gallery within the last 5 years. You must not have current consistent commercial gallery representation in the United States. You must not be currently enrolled in a degree program, and you must have maintained a studio practice outside your academic school setting for 3 or more years. I would also add that if you're applying as a collaborative team, this shouldn't be the first time that you're working together. It really should be a situation where your practice is really entwined. I wrote here, think Christophe Jean-Claude. We want it to truly be a solo exhibition. So if your work is so entwined that it could be exhibited and considered a solo exhibition, then it would be appropriate to apply collaboratively. Some quick frequently asked questions. The first one, I'm an artist. Can I apply in both categories? So both for a solo exhibition and a curatorial proposal. You absolutely can. The one caveat is that we don't allow curators to include their own artwork in an exhibition. Secondly, I have a lot of great ideas. Can I submit multiple proposals? Unfortunately, no. So to clarify, you can submit one curatorial proposal and one solo exhibition proposal, but not more than one in each category. I've had a solo exhibition at a small gallery in Brooklyn or the Bronx and Outer Borough. Am I still eligible to apply? That gets a little complicated. There are so many different galleries and different kinds of galleries in New York. Definitely if it was a gallery that was a nonprofit gallery or an artist-run space, you would still be eligible to apply. If it's another situation where you're just not sure, please email me, and I'm happy to kind of figure that out with you one-on-one. Next, the selection process. So first, an initial review. Entries are immediately disqualified when applicants don't meet our eligibility guidelines. So again, ask if you're not sure. If an applicant submits multiple proposals, or if applications are incomplete. So double check, triple check before you submit to make sure that you have included everything that we require. The jury only reviews applications that are complete and are eligible. Our jury is a panel of artists and curators that changes each year, and that remains anonymous until the results of the open call are announced. But they select the winning entries based on criteria that include the feasibility of the proposal. Is your exhibition realistic for Q's gallery space? If you aren't sure about that, definitely ask us. If it's something that has a pretty complicated installation or involves altering the space in any way, definitely double check with us. There are certain things that we definitely don't allow just off the bat, things like including live animals in your proposal. But if it's something that seems a little iffy, again, I'm happy to answer any questions in advance of the deadline. They also evaluate for completeness, sort of how well the concept is developed. We want to know that you've put a lot of thought into your proposal. And third is originality. Does the exhibition offer something new, experimental, or unique? Is your work or your approach to showing your work something that we haven't seen before? That's something that we're always looking for. Then we'll talk about submission requirements, and I'll break each of these down, but just a quick overview. For solo exhibitions, we require a resume or CV, a narrative bio, an artist statement, a short synopsis of your exhibition, a detailed exhibition proposal, a completed budget worksheet, and work samples. For curatorial projects, we require a curator CV, a list of at least 4 participating artists, and short narrative bios for each artist, short synopsis of the exhibition, detailed exhibition proposal, a completed budget worksheet, and some work samples. I guess I should add, I didn't include information about a resume or CV. Just to clarify, that is an artist resume or artist CV, so it should discuss your artistic achievements rather than the kind of resume you might present for a job interview. There are a lot of great resources available for how to put those together. So on to narrative bios. This should use up to 200 words and should summarize in full sentences your resume or CV. So it should include things like your exhibitions, publications, grants, residencies, or other artistic achievements. And it should be written in the third person. So if I were writing about myself, I would use she or her. Here's an example from one of our past open call selections. Nancy Floyd exhibited at Q in fall of 2017. And I won't read this for you. Again, you can refer back to it if you'd like an example, but it's pretty straightforward. Nancy talks about herself in the third person and outlines her past exhibits, some awards and grants that she's received, a book of hers that was published, and it also explains her education and where she currently lives, which is all pretty standard. So next is the artist statement. This should use up to 500 words and should describe your artistic practice. It should answer questions like, what media and subject matter do you work with? And we should have some idea, after we've read it, what your work is about, what it does. You should write this in the first person, so using I or my. I've included in the description a link to a really helpful resource if you need help writing your artist statement. Kara Ober of Be More Art wrote a really great article about it. So here's an example of Nancy Floyd's artist statement. Nancy's work is photography, and she wrote a really concise artist statement explaining some of her current artistic interests. This is a good example of an artist statement to refer to. Here's another example. This is by Christina P. Day, another winner of our open call who showed at CUE in the late fall of 2016. And Christina's work was a little bit more conceptual, but she still does a really good job of talking about her work in a way that's very clear and very accessible. So if you're in that situation where maybe it's not as easy to talk about your work, I would recommend looking at Christina Day's as an example of a good artist statement, but also definitely look at websites of your favorite artists and look at their artist statements and see what you like, what you don't like. That's always a great way to continue to improve your own artist statement. So next, the short exhibition synopsis should use up to 60 words. That's really short, just 2 or 3 sentences, explaining very concisely what is included in your exhibition. Here's an example by Nancy Floyd. She writes, I am proposing an exhibition of approximately 15 images from my self-portrait series, Weathering Time, along with video projections of all the 2,500 plus images. Each of the 15 images will contain between 2 and 90 self-portraits and range in size from 10 inches by 13.6 inches to 42 inches by 96 inches. That's very specific. You don't necessarily need to give us dimensions in inches, but what's really great about this is how concise it is and how I have a very, very clear idea of what work is being included in the exhibition. So next, a detailed exhibition proposal. The exhibition synopsis was a place to just give us the facts. This is a place to really delve deep and talk about your exhibition. So it should include a very thorough outline of the exhibition. It should include both the background, so how you developed your concept, what your inspiration was, and your plan for the exhibition. So here's an example by Christina Day. Christina's work is an example of a work that was a site-specific installation. So it's something that she didn't have already made, and she didn't have images available to submit as work samples. And that's a question that we receive often is, can I submit new work in my proposal, and can I submit a proposal for a site-specific work or a work that I haven't made yet? And the answer is absolutely yes. But then you have a challenge of describing and communicating very clearly what that work will be and convincing us that you can execute it. And so Christina does a really great job of doing that. So again, this is a great resource to refer to if you are proposing a work that hasn't yet been completed. So I've highlighted a few things here that I wanted to point out specifically. In the first paragraph, Christina talks about her inspiration for the work in a very narrative way. It's just a great hook. You don't necessarily need to follow this structure. But one thing I did highlight is right in the first paragraph, she situates her proposed work in the rear exhibition space of CUE. And that's really important that she's thinking very specifically about her space. And we know that she's put a lot of thought into having her work specifically here at CUE. At the beginning of the next paragraph, she writes, in approaching the work in the center of the gallery, a visitor walks up to a large white-walled cube, roughly 14 feet wide by 22 feet long by 8 feet high, to approach a narrow gap in the walls through which is a tight cropped view of deeper inner space. And that sentence continues, but what I love here is that she's put herself into the shoes of a gallery visitor. And so she's thinking very concretely about the experience of a viewer and also the experience of someone in Q's space. She's also giving us some dimensions. So just from this sentence, I can very clearly envision what it is that she's proposing. And it continues on to the next page. So just a couple more things I wanted to highlight from Christina's proposal. Here she writes, in previous work, like shift number 2 shown in the submitted images, and we'll look at her work samples later, so I'll point out that work. But this is a great thing to do whether you're proposing existing work or new work, but to let us know in the exhibition proposal how some of those work samples relate to the exhibition that you're proposing. Is this a work that's going to be included in the show? Is this a work that's similar to what's included in the show? Is this a work that's maybe different from what's included in the show, but there are elements of it that help inform that work? And so that's all great to include here. And then finally, she just kind of threw this in at the end. She writes, in facilitating the construction of this project, interior buildings are to be built off-site in my studio in Philadelphia and then transported to New York City, where they will be built and finished into place with outer drywalling completed on site. And again, that just makes it so clear that she's thought about this exhibition from its conception to transporting it here to how it's going to fit in this space and what the experience of a visitor to the gallery will be in viewing the piece. So just a really well thought out and really compelling proposal. So here are some tips for writing just any aspect of the written application. The first thing is to write for a general audience. Try to avoid using kind of art jargony words. We won't be impressed, and if it makes it hard to understand what it is that you're proposing, it will detract from your application. So, you know, you can write plainly, just explain in a general, or not in a general way, but explain for a general audience what it is that you're proposing. And if you have a friend or a family member who would be willing to read your application, just let you know if it makes sense to them. That's a great way to check that you are making sense. The second is to be direct. So avoid using the passive voice or the future conditional tenses. We know that this is hypothetical, but you don't need to say, if selected, my exhibition would include. You can just say, my exhibition includes, and that's great. The third thing is to be specific. So write about the specific works included in your exhibition and write specifically about an exhibition at Q. I know that it's a lot of work to put together a proposal and that you may be tempted to recycle it for several organizations or other application opportunities. And that's great, but your best chance at getting a show at Q or really anywhere else is to show that you've put in the time and care to tailor your exhibition to that organization or space. Now we'll take a look at some work samples. So for solo exhibitions, you can include up to 10 images and 4 video or audio samples if that's applicable to your work. For curatorial projects, you should include at least 1 image for each artist, up to 15 images, and video or audio samples where applicable. So the first thing to keep in mind is this should really illustrate your proposal. So you should include samples of your completed work, works in progress, maybe a plan or a sketch of what you have in mind, anything that's going to be most effective in illustrating to us your proposed exhibition. The second thing is to use high quality images. Make sure that your images reflect the quality of your work. Make sure that they're clear, bright photographs, photographed on neutral, undistracting backgrounds, and make sure they convey what's important about your work. If what's important about your work is the fine details, make sure you include some detail shots, that kind of thing. So just to clarify, these were submitted each as separate images, but just for the ease of viewing them now, I've thrown multiple images on each slide. But these are Christina Day's work samples that she submitted. This piece is that piece that she referenced in her detailed exhibition proposal called Shift Number 2. And this is the work that is most similar to what she was proposing. And so you'll see as I scroll through that she devoted 5 out of her 10 images to this work. And I think that that is a really smart thing to do, is to think about what's going to be most effective in conveying your proposed work and making sure that your images center around that. Okay, we're going to move on in a minute to filling out our sample budgets. Here are some quick tips, just generally before we do. The first thing is to submit your best, most realistic estimate for your expenses at this point in time. We understand and expect that things are going to change between now and an exhibition next year, and that's totally okay. So don't stress out too much. Just do your best in terms of estimating your expenses. The second thing is to fill in the blanks. My advice would be, if you come across a category that doesn't apply to you in our budget worksheet, put in a 0 or an N/A for not applicable, just to make sure that you don't miss any areas. Just follow the budget worksheet instructions. Those are included on our website, and they walk you through in detail exactly how to fill out the budget. Another thing is, when you're done filling out your worksheet, your total income should match your total expenses. It should be a balanced budget. So that's just a sort of final check. And I will open up some budget examples in a minute. I just will leave you with some kind of general last advice for before you submit, and then we'll talk about budgets. So the first thing is to double check, triple check, quadruple check. Once you submit, applications cannot be edited. So before you submit, make sure that you've completed all of the required application materials, make sure that your links work, make sure that all of your work samples are attached and that you've attached your budget worksheet. My advice here would be to take a look at our website, where we outline exactly what you need to include in your application, and work on your application in a Word document or another document that you can save, and then just copy and paste into the submittable form, so you don't run into any situations that are just kind of internet glitches or glitches with the site in trying to submit. The second thing is to get a second opinion. So again, if you have a friend or a family member who'd be willing to read through your application and just give you some feedback, let you know if they understand your proposal, that's always really helpful. The third thing is to plan ahead. We do receive a high volume of submissions the day before the deadline, and submittable can get a little overwhelmed. So if possible, submit early. That's just, yeah, good advice. The fourth thing is to ask questions. Again, my email is included in the description. Please email me if you have specific questions about your proposal or the budget, what's allowed in our gallery space, your eligibility, how to submit the application, any other questions you might have. Definitely shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I will just say, again, refer to point 3 and plan ahead. I'll do my best to answer all of your questions, but if it's the week of or the day of the deadline, I may not get to them all. Okay, so now let's take a look at a sample solo exhibition budget. And let's just walk through this. So the first thing is exhibition income. Here at the top, we have Q's contribution. And the way that this breaks down is an artist honorarium in the amount of $5,000, an art shipping budget in the amount of $1,500, an art installation fees, $900, hospitality, $200, catalog printing, $3,500 for a total of $11,100. So the artist honorarium is something that you can use as you wish to help cover expenses, and we'll show you how that breaks down when we go down to the expenses section. But the art shipping budget, the art installation fees, hospitality, and catalog printing are all fixed amounts that Q contributes, and those are based on our experience with the average costs of an exhibition. So these numbers cannot be reduced. They can be added to if you feel like that isn't going to be sufficient funding. You can add more, but these are the minimum amounts and the fixed amounts that Q will contribute. Here we have a category called additional income. So if you imagine that $11,100 isn't going to cover your exhibition expenses, that's a situation where you would be responsible for coming up with some additional funding, whether that's personal savings, whether that's a grant from another organization, whether you wanted to crowdfund that money. In this sample budget, I put in a Kickstarter fundraiser. And here, please see this note to indicate received or committed funding with an asterisk. So here we've said, maybe I'm an artist, and for part of my exhibition, I really wanted to produce a movie. I don't know, I wanted to interview my grandmother about her experiences as an immigrant and create a movie about it. And so I started a Kickstarter for that expense for $1,000, and I raised that money. And the asterisk, again, indicates that I already have that money, that's committed funding. So then if I don't have any other additional income sources to add, I'll just put that $1,000 total down in this total category. Here in total income, I'm going to add the total additional income and the total exhibition income from Q. So 11,100 plus an additional 1,000 for a total of 12,100. So now let's go down and look at exhibition expenses. The first thing is art shipping. So again, Q is going to contribute 1,500, a sort of average amount for art shipping. And I feel like for my movie, and maybe I also have some drawings, it seems like that's going to be adequate. An example where $1,500 might not be adequate for shipping would be if you had large-scale sculpture that needed to be created, if you were traveling from really far away. If you're not sure what shipping might cost, my recommendation is to contact some shipping services, FedEx, whatever might be appropriate to ship your artwork, and to request a quote. And really that's a great thing to do for any of your expenses that you're not sure about, including equipment rental, supplies, travel. Just get a quote and include that quote as your estimate here for budgeting purposes. So I'm going to say, for my purposes, 1,500 is going to cover my shipping expenses. But maybe I think that my art installation is going to be a little bit complicated. Q's $900 covers one art handler working for 2 days to install and 2 days to deinstall. If you feel like you might need an extra day or two or an extra art handler or two, you can include additional funding in your budget here. So I'm thinking I might need 1 extra day of art handling. So I'm going to put $1,100 here and know that I need to draw that additional funding either from my artist honorarium or from my additional income, in my case, this Kickstarter fundraiser. Next is hospitality. Q contributes $200. that's the average cost of providing beer or wine for an exhibition opening. I'm fine with that. So I'm going to put 200 here. If you'd like something additional or something else for your exhibition opening or another event, again, you can draw funding from your artist honorarium or from an additional income source to supplement that hospitality budget. Next, catalog printing. This is pre-populated in the sheet and will be pre-populated on your budget because that's not an expense. That will change. Next, for equipment rental, I will add here that CUE does have some equipment, tech equipment, things like a projector or TV monitors that we do have available to use for free. So if you are going to include some tech equipment in your exhibition, shoot me an email and I'm happy to send you that list because that can help you to cut down your expenses. We also have some pedestals and basic installation supplies. And again, I'm happy to send you the details for that. But if it's something that CUE doesn't have, that you don't have, and that you may need to rent, this would be a place to put your equipment rental. And so here, I'll just scroll down for a moment. For this, I've imagined that the video that I want to make, I'm going to need to rent a camera and some lights to produce that video. So here I've said I'll need $200 for my equipment rental. So I'll just scroll back up and put $200 here. Again, if you're not sure what that rental cost might be, just hop online, do some Googling, find some services or companies that rent that equipment and reach out to them for an estimate of that cost. For supplies, let's say I need $700 that I estimate for things like my art supplies, paper, paint, whatever that might be. And maybe also if I need some specialized hardware to display my work, that would be included here. So I'm going to estimate that my supply budget is about $700. Next is travel. We do require artists to be at CUE for the installation and opening of their exhibition, and when possible, to be here for the deinstallation, although that is less crucial. So let's estimate that my travel expenses, and travel should include both travel and your accommodations. If you need to pay for a hotel or a place to stay in New York, you can include that in your travel estimate. So let's say $1,500 for my travel. For professional services, again, let's scroll down just to some notes here. So professional services, I'm not a videographer, and I'm really excited about this video that I'm doing, but I'm going to need to hire someone to help me with the video editing. So I've asked a friend of mine who's agreed that $800 is a good budget to help me edit my video. So that's one professional service. I also want to have some of my drawings framed for the show, and an estimate for the framing costs is $1,200. And finally, CUE covers the design and printing of the catalog, but what we don't cover is catalog-ready images. So if you need to hire a professional photographer to take images of your work to include in the catalog, that's an expense that should go under professional services. And here I've written, I estimate about $300 to hire a professional to help me photograph my work for the catalog. So we'll scroll back up, and under professional services, that totals to $2,300. Next, if you anticipate expenses that don't slot into any of these categories, you can throw them here. In my case, I don't have any of those expenses, so here I'll put 0. Again, just to make sure I'm populating every blank in this budget worksheet. So now my artist honorarium after expenses and my additional income after expenses. So here I had $1,000 from a Kickstarter fundraiser to devote to my filming, and I've used all of that money. So my additional income after I've deducted all of my expenses is going to be 0. And then I'm going to tally up anything that I had to withdraw from my artist honorarium to help me cover some of my other expenses, like equipment rental and travel. And what's left over is $1,100. So now I did the math, and we're to add up all of my exhibition expenses in this category. It totals to $12,100. And as a final check, we'll make sure that $12,100 here as my total expenses matches my income of $12,100. And it does, and that's perfect. It's a balanced budget. Then we'll look down here at notes. So we ask you to itemize the amounts entered in equipment rental, professional services, or other line items. So here I've put my equipment rental, my video camera and lights to produce my video, and the professional services, video editing, framing, and photography for my catalog. Under additional notes, let us know how you're deducting funds from your artist honorarium or from additional income. So here, I'll let you know that for art installation fees, I estimated that I'll need an extra day of labor from an art handler. So that's $200 to cover that expense taken from my artist honorarium. For travel, let's say I live in Chicago or something, and so I'm estimating $300 round trip. So 2 trips, one for the installation and opening and one for the deinstall. Comes to $600, and then I estimate about $900 for my accommodation for my hotel in New York. And we're done. So that's great. If you do have questions about your budget, I would say the best thing to do is, again, to refer to our budget worksheet instructions listed in the resources section at the bottom of the open call pages on our website. And that will walk you through in great detail each section of the budget. If after looking at that, you're still confused or still have questions, definitely shoot me an email and I'm happy to try to answer them for you. And now let's take a look at a sample curatorial budget, which is similar, but the numbers are a little bit different. Okay, so here, again at the top, we have the exhibition income that Q contributes. The Q contribution is $2,500 of a curator honorarium, $2,500 artist fee budget, $2,000 production budget, $1,500 art shipping, $900 art installation fees, $200 hospitality, $3,500 for catalog printing, for a total of $3,100. Now, just as we looked at with our sample solo exhibition budget, art shipping, art installation, hospitality, and catalog printing, these are fixed amounts. Q isn't going to contribute less than this amount or more than it, but if you feel like these are not going to cover your expenses, you can supplement with your production budget or with additional income or your curator honorarium if you'd like. This is not something that should be used in the same way as the artist honorarium to cover things like supplies, unless you really feel that you want to use it that way. But this is going to be used mostly to cover curator travel, and then however else the curator wants to use that money personally. So again, if $13,100 is not going to be sufficient to cover your expenses, we'll come down here to the additional income category. And here you can list income that's committed, so money that you've already received, or money that you haven't yet received, potential income. So maybe a grant that you've applied to, but you're not sure if you've received it. Maybe you intend to start a Kickstarter, but you haven't yet. Any of that is fine. Just, again, differentiate with an asterisk if it is committed, and otherwise don't mark it with an asterisk. So here, let's say I've applied to ABC Foundation, a fictional foundation, for a grant in the amount of $500. Again, this is not something I'm sure that I've received, but I'm going to include it here for budgeting purposes. So I don't have any other sources of additional income or potential sources of additional income here. So my total is just going to be that $500. Now for total income, we'll add the total from the additional income and the total of Q's contribution for a total of $13,600. And then we'll take a look down here at our, exhibition expenses. So artist fees is going to include the fees for any artists who are included in the exhibition, as well as the fees for any guest speakers or artists who participate in panel discussions or workshops or other events that you produce in conjunction with your curatorial project. For guidelines on how much to pay each of those artists, Q prefers to adhere to wage guidelines, and we've included those guidelines again in the detailed budget instructions for the curatorial project, so refer to that. And if you'd like more information, check out Wage for Work, their website. So here, let me scroll down to my notes where I've broken down exactly how much I'm going to pay each artist or panel discussion member or the artist who's participating in my workshop. And so you can see here that my total is $2,785. And this does exceed a little bit what Q contributed, the $2,500 that Q contributed, but I can pull that excess from my production budget, and I've just noted that here. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this $2,785 and put that up here for my artist fees. Next, art shipping. All of my artists are pretty local to the New York area, so I'm not worried that my shipping is going to exceed $1,500. Again, if you're not sure, if it seems like your work needs to be created or is really heavy or large, or for some other reason might be more expensive to ship, you can supplement your art shipping budget here with the production budget, with additional income. Yeah, that's always an option. But here, I'm just going to put my 1,500. I estimate that will cover my art shipping expenses. For art installation fees, it's going to be a pretty straightforward installation. So I'm just going to put my $900 here. Again, that will cover 2 days of one art handler installing and 2 days of one art handler de-installing my show. For hospitality, again, I'm happy with just wine or beer at my opening, so I'll put $200 here. Catalog printing, again, this is a fixed cost, so there's nothing to do there. For equipment rental, let's scroll down to my notes here. I apologize, I didn't include that here, but let's say that I wanted to rent a really good quality projector. For example, one of my artists is a video artist, and there's a particular projector that she would like to use for her show. And so we've decided to rent one, and it's going to cost $450, let's say, to rent that high quality projector for 6 weeks. So that's an example of something that might go under equipment rental. For supplies, I don't estimate that I'll need too many supplies. Here I've put $150 just for some kind of hardware and other installation supplies. For professional services, here we'll scroll down. For professional services, I decided that I'd like to hire a carpenter to make a custom display for my exhibition. That's absolutely an option. So, fabrication is an example of a professional service. You might require, again, catalog photography is another great example, framing, all of those. Anytime that you're hiring someone to help you with your exhibition, that would fall under professional services. So I'll take that $715 for my carpenter, and I'll put that here. Then under other, I realized that it would be really helpful for me to have exhibition postcards to spread the word about this exhibit. And so I've done some research, and it's going to cost about $400 to have those printed. So $400 will go here in my other line. So the last thing here is curator travel. We would ask the curator to be here definitely for the installation and for the opening, as well as any events that you're proposing in conjunction with your curatorial project. And as a side note, we usually can schedule those to coincide either with your opening or with the closing of the show. So if travel to New York is difficult, you may not need to make like a third or a fourth trip, but we would ask you to be present for those events. So here, let's say I live pretty far from New York, like maybe on the West Coast. So getting here is going to be expensive, but I have a friend who's said that I could stay with them while I'm here, so I don't have to worry about a hotel or lodging costs. So let's say $1,100 is going to be my total curator travel expenses. And that's something that you can withdraw from your curator honorarium. In fact, that's something that you cannot withdraw from the production budget. So it needs to come either from the curator honorarium or from additional income. In this case, I decided if I do get this $500 grant, I want to apply that to help with my travel. And so here I'm going to put 0 and just put that $500 towards curator travel. And then the additional $600 that I estimate that I need, I'll deduct from my curator honorarium. So minus that $600, I'll have $1,900 left of my honorarium. So when I total all of that up, it's going to add up to $13,600. So again, I'll do my double check. 13,600 total expenses matches what I have available for income, $13,600. My budget balances, and that's great. So now, again, we'll make sure that we note anything here on the second page of the budget worksheet. So I explain how the artist fee budget will be broken out amongst the participating artists and program speakers. Again, both on our website or the wage website, it will explain the minimum recommendations for fairly compensating artists. You can certainly pay them more if you have the budget to do so, but we ask that you at least adhere to the minimum. And then to itemize the amounts entered in professional services or the other expenses line items. In this case, we decided to hire a carpenter to help fabricate a display for the exhibition. So that's a professional service. And under other, we decided to print postcards for the show, which is $400. Additional notes here. Again, I had to pull $285 from my production budget to help supplement my artist stipends. And then $500 from my grant is going to help cover my travel expenses, as well as $600 from my curator honorarium. And that's the end. So at this point, if anyone has any questions that I have not covered, or if there's something that I haven't fully explained, please say so in the comments, and I will do my best to address that. I am also certainly available via email. Again, my email, eva@QArtFoundation, is included in the description, as well as all over our website. please email me or stop by the gallery. I will most likely be sitting at the front desk, and I'm happy to talk to you in person about your proposal or any questions that you have. And we also just generally recommend coming by the space if you're local and able to do so. We do have the floor plans available on our website, but seeing the space and getting a feel for it in person is really helpful in thinking about your exhibition.